I wanted to share with you a few thoughts about my mother because, well, for two reasons. One is that I know a lot of people would have liked to have come to her service but couldn't because of the virus and for other reasons. And also because I think her life can teach us all something, especially those of us who struggled with depression or anxiety, because I think my mother definitely did, but she still managed to be a good person. But just some basic things about who she was and reasons that I enjoyed being around her was that you couldn't tell recently, but she was an athlete, especially when she was younger. She was involved in horseback riding. She did field hockey. When I was a kid, I remember her walking probably 3 miles every day with her best friend at the time, and she by doing this, she developed these huge calf muscles. Like I wish that I could get calf muscles like hers. They were just like grapefruits in the back of her legs. And there was actually one time when I'd gone to a Renaissance fair around 13 or 14 years old, and a guy I went to school with did not know she was my mother, and he pointed to her legs when she was turned around and her calf muscles and said, "My God, look at the size of those things." And I remember just nodding and saying, "Yep, those are pretty big." She also started karate. I started when I was 9, and she got tired of just sitting there, so she showed up, and she actually got her black belt. One of my favorite memories now, at the time, it was disappointing, but now it is, that she went to a karate tournament and she was disqualified for excessive force. She loved to read, she loved movies, she loved sewing and quilting. Shopping was one of her releases, and sometimes reading and shopping would come together because she'd see a book on the rack she wanted to read, and she'd pick it up, and we'd be stuck there for an hour or two because she was just skimming through and getting the basic plot points and moving forward. And I'd just go look at the toys and hope they had some sort of video game display. One thing that made her a little bit different from a lot of people was race relations. She had an experience when she was younger that, even though justice wasn't served in this particular instance, I think it made her a better person. There was a little girl who moved in. She went to school in upstate New York. That's where she was from. And a little girl who was black came, and on the playground one day, she hit my mother, and my mother hit her back, but the teacher only saw my mother hit the little girl. And so the teacher took her aside and talked to her about how we're supposed to care for people no matter what their skin color is, and not to be mean to people just because they're different. And I think that stuck with her. It changed the way she treated people. It certainly changed the way she taught me to treat people. And it extended into her career. She worked at Handy Head Start for 30 years, and every picture of her classroom, you would see that most of the children there were black. We grew up in a neighborhood that was mostly black, and she didn't mind, whereas it seemed as if I talked to some other folks and they wondered why it was we still lived there. But she just saw everyone as a person. She became a United Methodist and started expressing her spirituality when she was fairly young. It wasn't because her family did, because they didn't, but the United Methodist Church picked her up, took her to church, and she got involved with that for her whole life. She was a near lifelong United Methodist, and she made sure I went to church when I was a kid as well. We went until about 6th grade, and that was a time that we had a long break between 6th and 10th grade for me. And the reason we stopped was there was a little boy there who asked me why my mother didn't get me church clothes, and that was enough to make me want to stop. At that point, she'd had fewer reasons to want to go, and we just stayed out for a while. But we'd often talk about God and doing what's right and morality. I don't feel like you can really honor somebody, though, without talking about the obstacles that they have overcome. My mother really changed my definition of what a hero would be over the last few years. My mother was certainly not perfect. There were things in her life that I think she would have liked to have changed if she could have. She came from a rough home life, first of all. It was dysfunctional. Bad things had happened. And when my father had met her up north and said, "Do you want to live with your family in upstate New York or New Jersey, or do you want to come down to Alabama without skipping a beat?" She said she wanted to come to Alabama. And there were things that I think she hadn't worked through, things that I think she didn't know she needed to work through, and they expressed themselves in different ways. She wasn't good in social situations. She would say things that were awkward around adults. She had a knack for saying the most embarrassing thing and embarrassing people, and especially as a teenager, that was horrifying, but that's what she did. There were times that she lacked confidence. She would get depressed. Maybe the most obvious one was that she started hoarding when I was a kid. She used shopping as a therapy, but she had a harder time throwing things away. I remember as a kid being a little bit embarrassed to have people over because of the way that the house was getting. Not just the way she might act, but the way the house was. One of the stories that I remember about her just not knowing how to present herself was that she was very competent in terms of being a teacher. She was great with kids, great as a teacher. She was invited to UNA early childhood development class to show the people how you ought to read to children. But she wasn't good in interviews. I remember as a kid watching her get ready one morning when she was going to get an interview and seeing how she had done her hair, how she had done her makeup, how nervous she was. And even as just a 7, 8, 9-year-old kid, knowing that things were not going to go well. But I think all those things are encouraging to me, because I think every one of us, we have problems. There are ways that we're a mess. There are ways that we fall short of the person that we would like to be, because I do believe that my mother would have really liked to have had the house in a different way. She would have liked to have been better with people. She would have liked to have been able to say the right things in conversations, but she just didn't know how. And that's why she's such a role model for me, because I know that I don't have things all together, but she made the most of what she had. Especially after she died, I started getting messages from people showing me pictures of quilts that she had quilted. She probably quilted over 300 quilts for different people, maybe more than that I never knew about. And the reason she was able to do that, there were certain days that she had gotten more and more depressed over different things. Maybe the biggest hit was when my dad died. Then if she lost an animal, that would do it. But if she couldn't get up, if she couldn't go anywhere, if she couldn't get up to clean, if she couldn't get up to cook, what she could do is she could sit on the couch and quilt and love people in the best way that she could. She made sure to buy flowers for the church once a month. She was always there for our karate class. She was always there for church. She did everything that she was able to do. And maybe the most important thing, the thing that I know I want to do as a parent, she was able to accomplish, and that is to set your kids up so that things are better for them than they were for you. And I know that she did that. And there's a story that the pastor who did a great job at the service read, and it's in this this particular Bible, the heading says the widow's offering, but it says Jesus looked up and saw the rich putting in their gifts, then saw a poor one put in 2 small copper coins, and Jesus said, look, what she gave was more because she gave all she had. And I think it would be valuable to just read this a little bit differently, and I think it would get the same message across. But it says Jesus looked up and he saw the rich putting in their gifts. So their confidence, their ability to do the things that they want to do, their lack of any kind of mental illness, their money, their social intelligence, all the things that made them successful. They put those offerings in the box. And then there was a poor widow who put her quilts in, put her sewing in, put her consistency in, put showing up in. And Jesus said that she gave the greater gift because she gave everything she knew how to give. There is one story that, and this is one of those that you can take or leave. I believe in it, but I've got a friend who he has dreams, he has visions, he has experiences with God that are difficult to explain, and too many strange things have happened for me to dismiss anything that he says. And it was a Sunday after my mother died, and we were talking, and he said, I saw your mother. And I said, really? What'd you see? And he might have seen her once sitting down at our house. But he said, I said, what'd you see? And he said, well, it was like she was looking over a fence, standing up on her tippy toes, trying to see over, as if she was excited about what was coming next. Like she was a part of the communion of saints. She was wearing a light gray dress, almost blue, hemmed, barefooted. And then I said, was there anything else about her that you noticed? And he said, yeah, she had these huge calf muscles. And for me, it was too much of a coincidence, and I take comfort in it, believing that she's not here, but she's not gone, and she's a part of that cloud of witnesses that Hebrew talks about. And that's my mother, and those are the reasons that my definition of a hero and who I want to be my role model has changed. Thanks for listening.